Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. Today is the 14th of February 2023. These are the stories that we will be discussing in detail during the course of the show. We'll begin with the Indian tax authorities raiding the BBC's New Delhi offices today. Of course, that brings to mind a lot of question marks, but a lot of realities also as far as the way India has been dealing with any such information that brings a bad light on its BJP antics or the Hindutva policies. We've seen how the BBC too took out a documentary some time back highlighting with facts and figures, and of course confirmed facts and figures as to how and what happened in the Gujarat riots. Now, as a result of that, we've seen very strong reactions coming from the Indian government, and of late now we have seen this raid by the tax authorities on the BBC's offices in New Delhi. Now, the police have sealed off the building. The officers are stationed outside, and they say that their people's mobile phones are being confiscated and nobody is allowed to leave or to enter the building. What kind of light does that pour as far as India's so-called democratic rights or human rights are concerned? This added to so many other things. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the relationship that exists between Pakistan and the United States of America. US State Department Counselor Derek Chollet is going to lead a delegation to Pakistan this week as Washington and Pakistan are seeking to repair ties amid the strained relationship that had gone a bit sour because of the former Prime Minister. The US delegation is also going to visit Bangladesh along with Pakistan. They will be meeting with senior government officials, civil society members and business leaders. Not the first meeting that is happening. There's also a meeting as far as the defense is concerned on defense ties, on enhancing those defense ties. This meeting is going on in Washington as we speak. Also, there has been a lot of positivity emanating from the US side as far as helping Pakistan, cooperating with Pakistan on the economic front and on anti-terrorism, counter-terrorism rather as well. This is going to be our second story. And finally, we'll be talking about our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Saab, who is in Karachi on a day-long visit. He is witnessing the international joint naval exercises organized by the Pakistan Navy, in which the navies of more than 50 countries are participating. The main objectives, of course, we'll be talking about that of these exercises, the Aman 2023. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns the raid by the income tax authorities, or rather the tax authorities, on the BBC's offices in New Delhi. Whether it sheds a positive light or a negative light, we've seen in the past as well how they have been dealing with human rights situations within India or in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and nobody has said anything. No, I mean, there have been statements, but no concrete action has been taken. But this time, this is a direct action on a very important media outlet, one of the most respected media outlets, in fact, across the world, that is that of the BBC. And all of that apparently is because of the documentary that came out and that was produced by the BBC too, that came out in two parts in January this year, and it highlighted what happened in Gujarat in 2002, and of course it also highlighted the role of Narendra Modi, who was the then Chief Minister of the state of Gujarat. Now the police has sealed off the building. Half a dozen officers have been stationed outside the office. This occupies 2 floors in New Delhi to prevent people from leaving or entering. A lot of people are saying that the mobile phones have also been confiscated. The BJP leaders are also highlighting this as something that they normally do, and they said nobody can talk against our country. The fact remains that this is just reality, sad but a real check on what is actually happening in India since 2000s, and through the documentary that the BBC produced, it was just the facts and figures that had been checked and double checked, in fact. And while also talking to people who were there in New Delhi at the time of the Gujarat riots, diplomats who were there were also interviewed, and their points of views were also taken. But of course, the Indian government, as it always does whenever it is confronted with such allegations that are true in nature, but nevertheless they try to hide it in one way or the other, they have been trying to bifurcate the whole attention towards the BBC documentary by not allowing the documentary to be aired anywhere within India, although in 1 or 2 universities it was aired, but there has been a definite clamp on that on social media as well. the documentary has not been allowed to be aired. Now, the Gujarat violence, if you remember well, in 2002 left 1,000 people dead. Most of them were minority Muslims. The government advisor, the current government advisor, Kanchan Gupta, has slammed the documentary as hostile propaganda and anti-India garbage. Police, as you very well know, we remember that in one of the universities the documentary was shown, and after that police arrested around 24 university students. The Editors Guild of India, which is apparently a non-partisan association of editorial leaders, has said it was deeply concerned by this visit of the tax officers. It says it was distressed by this continuing trend of government agencies that are being used to intimidate and harass news organizations that are critical of the ruling establishment. It said also that the department searched the offices of media outlets. This is apart from what happened on the BBC. What the Editors Guild of India says that these offices have also searched other news media outlets such as those of News Click, News Laundry, Dainik Bhaskar and Bharat Samachar in 2021 after their critical coverage of the government. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal, in fact, Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal, who is an expert in international relations, joins us online. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Saab, this raid on the BBC, did it come as a surprise to you?
Hello?
Yes, Dr. Saab, can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Saab, did this raid on the BBC in New Delhi come as a surprise to you?
I think that it's not surprising. It was very much written on the wall that the Modi government is not going to accept this criticism or a reality which the BBC exposed it. Though everyone was aware of it, but when the BBC restarted or this came with the documentary proof, and BBC has its own credibility, of course, when they presented, instead of going against them in the court, they went for attacking, or you can say raiding, or indirectly punishing them. So it was expected that the Modi is going to, you can say, or the BJP government is going to revert back, and they did the same thing. But of course,
but did you think, Dr. Saab, that they would go to this level?
Yes, what do you expect from extremist? He's an extremist. He's a Hindutva, you can say, leader. He's you can say, extremist and radicalized person, and this political party is using Hindutva slogan or radicalized slogans for the sake of or for mustering the support of the people. They say they are using the war, they are using the hate speech, they are, you can say, killing, genociding the minorities. What do you expect from this kind of a government or this kind of a leadership when when they try to criticize them? There is no democracy. What you are raising the thing that people are expecting that in India there is a constitution or a democratic system, and that's why they are not expecting. No. Since 2014 and especially after 2019, the trends within the Indian politics indicates that there is no constitutionalism, there is no democracy, there is a fascism.
But then, Dr. Saab, why is India hailed as the biggest democracy in the world by the West?
I think that it is not hailed as the biggest democracy by the Democrats. It is only, yes, earlier, prior to 2014, it had a constitution. It has a democratic political system. Within the democratic political system, there were ups and downs, sometimes better democracy, sometimes worse democracy. But since the BJP came into power, and especially after 2019, the policies they adopted, like revoking the 370 article, then they revoking the other sort of thing, and then adopting keeping a policy, keeping in mind the religion rather than the democratic norms. That on the basis of that, I'm saying it's no more a biggest democracy. Earlier, when they used to say, of course, it was a 1 billion plus population state, and they had a democratic political system, and on the basis of that, people were saying. But now, in the last 3-4 years, all the norms have been, you can say, thrown in the dustbin.
Dr. Saab, anybody who tries to criticize the government one way or the other with facts and figures, whether it be of late the BBC or before that other news organizations. I talked about that in the beginning before we got in touch with you, like NewsClick, News Laundry, Dainik Bhaskar, Bharat Samachar. Their offices were also raided in 2021 because they were critical of the government. In a country that highlights pluralism as one of its basic policies, do you feel that the important powers that be need to exercise their powers to exert pressure on India to reverse its policies as far as this abuse of the basic rights of people in India is concerned, whether it be to highlight the truth or otherwise?
I think that the point which is very important, earlier when we used to say that India is doing this or these things are happening in India, the people or the West was not paying attention. They think that Pakistan is just criticizing. And frankly speaking, earlier during the Congress time or BJP, when it was having a coalition government, it was not, you can say, having a true face of RSS or these kind of the policies. But since 2019, when they received the majority in the Lok Sabha, and then on the basis of in the Rajya Sabha, they make amendments to the constitution, the policies they adopted, and now it is gradually exposed. And as we have seen now, BBC, which was a British broadcasting, and then they have started facing. Now, if anybody in the world saying that India is the biggest democracy, or that if the West is just looking on the other side, what is happening with the minorities in India, I think that the international community is then you can say not performing a responsibility. But on the other side, whatever I am saying, it is based on the Indian scholars or Indian writers. They are writing, they are expressing that the BJP government, which is led or steered by the Modi, it is no more a democratic government. Its policies are very much fascist or dictatorial or authoritarian. So by that way, when we look about it, it's not correct to say that it's the biggest democracy.
All right, Dr. Saab, I'd like to highlight some of the comments made by the government as a result of this documentary. They've called it garbage. They've called it pushing a discredited narrative, and this is the foreign ministry that says it. It is biased, lacks objectivity, and shows a continuing colonial mindset. Would you agree or disagree?
I think that all these jargons, or you can say adjectives which they have been using in order to protect them, they are not justified. Because BJP is not, if they say colonial mindset, how we say BBC has a colonial mindset? BBC has been projecting number of times the Indian democracy, number of times the Indian sort of thing. BBC is just based on the collection of interviews. BBC has came up with this documentary that, okay, in the Gujarat, 2 decades back, they were just investigated, and they came up that the then chief minister accidentally or unfortunately, it was the same personality that Narendra Modi, that he was involved or he gave a tacit approval and he was a part of the massacre of the Muslims. That is not a colonial mindset. If you are massacring a minority or you are killing the people, and if anybody is highlighting it, is it a colonial mindset? I think it's not correct. If it is a colonial mindset, then why they are doing a trade with the British? Why they are not banning them? Why they are visiting there? So it's not that. It's only the way, because they don't have a logical or tangible evidence to prove that the BBC is wrong. BBC is actually correct. That's why they are using this kind of the criticism.
Do you feel such sort of criticism is going to continue unabated, or do you feel there's going to be now a strong reaction coming from the West, notably the United Kingdom, after what has happened to the BBC offices in New Delhi? Do you expect something of that sort?
I think that the West will be going to act more rationally, because Western governments are more focusing on India's big economic market. Plus, India is very much now attractive as a strategic partner in order to contain the China. If you see the Quad, if you see the other policies of the French or the British. So, strategically, India is very much attractive for the West. That's why West is giving a priority to its geo-economic and geopolitical interest rather than the humanitarian. So that's why. Otherwise, if they had a focus on the humanity, or they had a concern about the humanity, then definitely they were not going to ignore their responsibility, which they are not responsibly behaving on what is happening in the Indian illegally occupied Kashmir.
Now, speaking of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Gregory Stanton of Genocide Watch has talked about the beginning of genocide within India. To what extent, in your point of view, Dr. Saab, will the West turn a blind eye to what India is perpetrating on the expense of, further accentuating its economic relationship with India? When will it put an end to, kind of not putting an end to what is happening within the occupied valley and within India? Will there be a limit, or when there will be actual genocide in India, it is only then that the West will decide what it wants to do and what it has to do?
I think that the Western nations or the international community have to revisit their policy, that they have to give a priority to the human rights or the humanity rather than the economic interest. But unfortunately, on the one side, they talk about the humanity, they talk about the human, they talk about the responsibility to protect. I'm sorry to say this, but it is fact that they have used this responsibility to protect or humanitarian intervention slogans or you can say jargons for justifying for their invasion in Iraq, for their invasion in Libya, for their invasion in other parts of the world. But why they are not invading in the India? Why they are not even criticizing if they are not invading there? But at least they have to criticize, they have to ban. So what India is doing in Kashmir, it's condemnable, it's brutality. But unfortunately, they are not paying attention on it.
Dr. Saab, the Congress also has, had a very strong reaction to this raid on the BBC offices in New Delhi. Other organizations like the Editors Guild of India has also openly talked about it. Do you feel it's going to have any effect on the government, or do you feel it's going to continue doing what it is doing? And do you feel that this is going to go unabated? To which extent? What I'd like to understand is, to which extent can this current Indian government go? Are the people within India so blindfolded now because of the way the Indian government has led them, that even in the next elections they are going to be again re-elected, and this is what's going to happen to and fro and to and fro, and at the end of the day we are going to be left with the Hinduistic policy-minded India?
Look, we have to not forget, India, within India, of course, there is a rational mind. There are people who think rationally, logically. There are sane people. There are voices who have been criticizing the Modi policy, but there have been demonstrations. People who are demonstrating and opposing it. But we have to not forget there is a majority, and this is a majoritarian dictatorship. It is the way what happened in the Germany, that Hitler came into power through majority, and then with the majoritarian dictatorship, the fascism started there. And same thing you find in India now. So it's a majoritarian. Sooner or later, the Indian people will start facing the other nations. I mean that Hindus or the other Dalits, they all are facing this problem of majoritarian. But unfortunately, India is passing through. Though the domestic forces have a lesser voice, but then there is the international forces. But they are also, you can say, looking on the other side instead of condemning these things. That's why Modi or BJP is having a free hand in this context.
Dr. Saab, with the BJP having a field day as far as whatever it wants to perpetrate on whosoever it wants to perpetrate its so-called policies that are democratic and pluralistic, do you feel that there is going to be some kind of revolt to that in the long run, or do you feel that the people in India are quite content with the policies that the BJP is doing because their country is moving forward, and so they also turn a blind eye to this?
I think that people will be more, look, we have to not forget there are 80% Hindus in there. And BJP is using very intelligently, since 1982 it has been using this slogan of victimhood, centuries of victimhood, and that's why they are leading the people. BJP economic policies will be going to determine what will be the future of BJP in India. Of course, in 2024, if there is no flagship kind of a thing, then we have a different view. But if they are using the same Modi as a Chowkidar or these things, definitely we cannot ignore. But sooner or later, the same voices in India will be going to prevail. India is a vibrant society. It's not possible that for years and years, definitely there will be. And we must not forget authoritarian or these kind of the majoritarian in the name majoritarian and majority authority dictatorship is not always successful. So sooner or later, the Indians themselves will be going to change the Modi or BJP dictatorship.
10 years will pass next year that this government took power, and since then there has been no letting go of the way it has been perpetrating violence or barbarities on Muslims in particular, but on other minorities as well. The basic rights of the minorities are not accepted the way they used to at one time. Do you feel that in the current context, and of course I understand that the majority in India are Hindus, that the BJP with its power politics are going to continue wielding power within India?
I think that in the near future, I'm looking the same trend, but in the after one or two elections, then the things will start changing. Because if you see the young generation, especially I was following the students in the universities, they are more liberal. Within the other societies in the many provinces, there people are very much opposing it. So it will be difficult for BJP to continue with the same hate speech or mustering the support of people on these kind of things.
Or anti-Pakistan propaganda for that matter as well.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So
thank you very much, Dr.
Yes. It will be changed. But of course, the change will come through the Indian own people.
All right. Let's hope the change comes sooner than later. Thank you very much, Dr. Zafar. Nawaz Jaspal Saab, expert in international affairs, talking to us about this raid by the tax people on the BBC's New Delhi offices. And of course, the reaction has been severe from some of the outlets. But let's see what the international media circuit say as far as this is concerned. We'll be back after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and our second segment pertains to the relationship between Pakistan and the United States of America. We've seen ups, we've seen downs, but of late there seems to be a genuine regard from both the sides to further develop and concentrate on their bilateral cooperation. If you just look at the tangent of what is happening in the last few weeks, there is going to be a delegation this week as Washington and Pakistan seek to repair the ties that had been mended because of the former Prime Minister. This delegation is also going to visit Bangladesh. Then Pakistan and the US are also holding trade and investment framework talks in Washington later this month, and also talks on counter-terrorism efforts. Also the defense talks that are going on in Washington as we speak. How is that going to bode for the future of relations between both Pakistan and the US? More in the following report.
The decades-long relationship between Pakistan and the United States has been in flux following the American military withdrawal from Afghanistan. Geopolitical concerns that shaped America's regional alignments and priorities also defined relations with Pakistan. Since geopolitical and geoeconomic dynamics are shifting fundamentally, both sides are emphasizing positive transformations in ties. Pakistan and the United States began their defense talks in Washington to enhance coordination on strategic issues and explore various options for ramping up bilateral military and security ties. The four-day talks ending on February the 16th is a second round of Pakistan-US mid-level defense dialogue. The first round was held in Pakistan in January 2021. US State Department Counselor Derek Chollet will lead a delegation to Pakistan this week. Economic ties and cooperation to tackle the impact of climate change would be on the agenda in the meeting between United States and Pakistani officials. The talks are being held in the backdrop of increasing militant activities in Pakistan by insurgents coming from Afghanistan. The US and Pakistan have a shared interest in fighting terrorists, and Washington has been assuring Pakistan its full support to counter terrorism. Pakistan and the United States are also holding trade and investment framework agreement talks in Washington in the last week of February and counter-terrorism dialogue next month.
And to talk about all of that and much more as far as Pak-US relations are concerned, we've been joined by Dr. Salma Malik, who's a foreign affairs expert. Dr. Salma, it's a pleasure to have you on board whenever we talk of international relations, because you are such a wonderful expert and you talk about different points of views as far as our cooperation with different countries is concerned. Let's talk about the United States of America. If you look at the tangent of the different meetings that are happening, are in the course of happening or will be happening, there seems to be this genuine positivity emanating between both the countries to foster a stronger relationship. How do you foresee this relationship developing in the coming months?
Thank you so much, Omar, for having me in the show. And it is always an honor and a pleasure to be part of your extremely intelligent conversation and discussion When we look at the Pakistan US relations, the only thing that has always been used to describe this relationship is that it is very conditional, it is seasonal, it has a lot of ups and downs to it, and it's a very, very warped kind of an ECG, which is highly situational. Having said that, we also know that the US wanted to exit Afghanistan after 20 long years of no deliverance in the real sense of the word. And Pakistan was part of the program. Pakistan was a partner, Pakistan was not a partner. A lot of US failures were blamed on Pakistan, yet the fact is that without Pakistan, the US could not at all operate in Afghanistan and have the Doha process and get an honorable exit from Afghanistan. In the initial run up to the Doha agreements and the US exit in August 2 years back, or 1.5 years back, what we generally tend to see is that there was a lot of blame shifting on Pakistan, which was as expected, and Pakistan is not new to that particular notion. But the fact was that at the end of the day, the reality has come out that it were the Americans who had asked the Taliban to step in to save civil war from Afghanistan. And in all of this picture, Pakistan remained integral to having a stability in this region. But the fact that there were certain bilateral complications in the relationship in the past couple of months, which also included the previous Prime Minister's visit to Russia, the bad press that happened as a result of that, and several other complications, we see that now there's a lot of maturity in understanding what Pakistan's rationale was in going to Russia, the energy crisis Pakistan, as well as the rest of the world, is facing, and our genuine needs, and we are not jumping camps, so to speak. So the US understands what our imperatives are, and in that sense of maturity and understanding, there's going to be a reconnection. Although the counselor level meeting that is happening, that is equivalent to an under secretary of state level, is a starter in that capacity. And of course, then at the end of this meeting, he would also visit Bangladesh. But the fact is that a couple of things are very important to tag here: economics, the fact that Afghanistan, and because of Afghanistan, Pakistan is also once again facing terrorism. There's a lot of complication and developments happening in and around the region. So the US does not want to let go of its old allies, such as Pakistan, and to see to it that we have a good working relationship. And a lot of back channel work has happened to make these things work.
All right, Dr. Saiba, also you talked about the rationale from the US side. Is it also part of the rationale that we are having talks on different fronts apart from counterterrorism? Because if you remember, a few years back, or a year back, the US was also only talking of having cooperation on counter-terrorism. But now we see a genuine, this request from the US side to look into further avenues as far as cooperation between Pakistan and the US is concerned. But let's come to security and terrorism. There is the US mid-level defense dialogue, whose second part is going on as we speak in Washington. Then there is going to be next month the meeting that is going to happen on terrorism as well between the US and Pakistan again. Is there a genuine concern from the US side as far as terrorism that has raised its ugly head in the region? And do you feel both the countries can work together in order to thwart all the attempts by such organizations like the TTP or Al Qaeda or Daesh?
Right. Thank you, Umar. You see, the issue is that each time, especially in the last 20 years, when the Afghan episode was underway, the US time and again tried to go solo. And they initially they actually thought that being a big power, being the superpower or the global power, they can walk the walk alone, and they don't need Pakistan. And they very arrogantly shunned our efforts away, dismissed many of the suggestions that Pakistan gave them initially, the idea about good engaging with the Taliban leadership, which is amicable to talks as well as engagement, hence came the terminology of good Taliban versus the bad Taliban. And at the end of the day, what we see is after 20 long years, the Doha actually ended up bringing the good Taliban, as the US defined them, to the tables, and then eventually in Kabul. And then the US also realized that nothing is possible in this area if Pakistan is not on board. So this love-hate relationship between these two countries has always been there. If the US blames us on trust deficit, we blame US equally on the trust deficit part. But as it happens in an increasingly interdependent world, you need each other. And the point that you have just talked about, the terrorism part and the grayness of security that is happening in this region, Pakistan is integral to the future stability of this region, as well as the fact that Pakistan, right next to Afghanistan, is the only country that provides, with its military, with its intelligence operations, with the CTD and several other national level actors, the type of protection that the US requires longhand. And since they have walked out of Afghanistan, we cannot expect the US to return so soon back to this theater of operation. Their energies, their focus is entirely on Russia or Eurasia, China, and Russia, as well as Ukraine. And they're trying to carry out containment policies there. So they need countries who are willing to at least take the front role, and Pakistan has always been brave enough to do that, even at the expense of its own security and stability. Many people would call us foolish, but the fact is that Pakistan cannot dismiss the fact that we are right next door, sharing a border with Afghanistan, sharing an big ethnic population with Afghanistan. So anything that happens in Afghanistan resonates in Pakistan. So there is this shared interest, and for this shared interest, both countries need each other. The US needs Pakistan, and Pakistan cannot fight this war alone unless Pakistan has the type of economic security that will help Pakistan move a little further. And we need the US to provide us with that type of security or assurance. Not even physical security, but assurance, so that we can actually go a step further on this account. Also, that the US has realized that by discarding Pakistan or removing Pakistan from the regional profile or picture, the picture can never be completed. They cannot even have a positive footprint in China unless Pakistan is on board. So, as much as they try to walk by themselves, or they try to exclude Pakistan from this profile, it cannot happen that way. And
Or
I
I'd like
hope
to take
there is positive engagement.
I'd like to take three terms out of this conversation. One is the fact that you say walk the walk or walk the talk. Then you say you've talked about US concerns, and you've talked about interests that the US has, and of course the US interest in Pakistan as well. Pakistan has a very strong relationship with China. Pakistan has a very strong relationship with other countries in the region as well. Do you feel the US understands Pakistan's concerns as well, that it cannot have a strong relationship with the US at the expense of, let's be blunt, letting go of its strong relationship with China or any other country with which it has a very strong and binding cooperation?
I think, Umar, that whenever there is a one-to-one discussion between the US and the Pakistani leadership, decision makers, policy makers, diplomats, at whatever level, when we are talking about, there is a very, very clear understanding about Pakistan's position, Pakistan's concerns, why Pakistan wants to maintain and even consolidate the CPEC, as well as have good relations with China. And there is no dismissal. I mean, I know it is very convenient to take account of history, but the Nixon moment also happened because of Pakistan.
Of
So the
course.
US has always been very alive to Pakistan's close terms with China. But of course, when we are looking at the larger political profile, then of course, then it becomes a little different. But the micropixels are very, very clear to both sides, and the US is very well aware. Plus, we have had several delegations that have been to the US, or the US delegates or decision makers have met Pakistani policy makers, and this point has been made clear to them. But of course, the semantics as well as looking at the larger US China profile, then Pakistan absolutely gets the negative press. So it is a multi layered situation which is pretty complicated.
A multi-layered relationship that is quite complicated. It's a very good statement that you've made here, and we could bifurcate it even further. But we've also been joined by our second guest, Dr. Manzoor Afridi, foreign affairs expert. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us as well. Dr. Manzoor, you must have listened to our conversation with Dr. Salma. Dr. Salma, I hope you're staying with us. Dr. Manzoor, when you look at the whole tangent of relationship with the US and you see the renewed interest that the US has had vis-a-vis Pakistan in different spheres, and the way it has also helped during the Geneva talks, where Pakistan, of course, raised $9 billion US dollars, and Bilawal Bhutto Sadai Sahab has gone on record saying the US did help bilaterally and on different fora to achieve that goal. Do you feel the US understands Pakistan's perspective in the region, and that it understands also that it needs to have a balanced approach vis-a-vis India and Pakistan?
Well, this is really important that Pakistan and the United States, they have resumed their security dialogue and all-encompassing comprehensive relationship to discuss between the two countries. Really, there were some ups and downs, especially if we see after the takeover of Taliban in Afghanistan. So the relationship between Pakistan and U.S. That was on the low ebb, but now it is encouraging that both countries, they are taking considerations and they are rediscussing their relationship to have new touch and new developments in their bilateral relationship. So no doubt that United States is very much understandable about Pakistan's situation and about the Pakistan's position, not only in the region, not only bilaterally, but even globally, if we see in so many spectra, and also the Afghanistan situation or the regional situation, what is evolving. And another thing, that some problems which are over there, like the terrorism and some other issues about also the climate change, where South Asia is one of the vulnerable regions of the world. So in this context, United States is having that consideration that Pakistan is important. And in bilateral relationship, this thing is really important and significant when major power and a regionally important country, they cooperate with one another, they interact with one another. So I think the resumption or more developments between Washington and Islamabad, those are encouraging, and it can pave a way for more steps for future development and for future consideration between the two countries. Another thing I want to add, that the problems which are regional are even at some time they are at a global level, so it can't be tackled single-handedly. So for this reason, United States is important for Pakistan, as well as Pakistan is also important for United States. But United States should also consider, and it should also focus that if it has served Afghanistan for 20 years or more than 20 years, so all the problems which are there, it doesn't mean that United States should not reconcentrate on it. It is responsibility of the U.S. or other important stakeholders, international community, to join hands with Pakistan or other regional and neighboring countries of Afghanistan to tackle all these issues of the region. As far as the question of India is concerned, so it is the right of every country, even the United States, to have a strong relationship with any state here, the case of India. But a relationship should not be at the cost of any other country. So if Pakistan has reservation, if it has some problems, so Washington has the responsibility and duty to talk about and to redress it, because the Pakistan's foreign policy mostly security oriented, and that is mostly because of India. So even the Pakistan's alliance with the U.S. When Pakistan joined it while signing the CETO and CENTO and also the bilateral security agreements with U.S. Back in the mid of 1950s, that was also because of India. And now the realignment and a kind of reconnection of U.S. with India, having a strategic partnership. And also, if U.S. considers the containment of China, so it should not harm the Pakistan's case in this regard. And if it is so, of course, then an enduring relationship, it can't be established between two countries here, I mean Pakistan and the United States. So new hopes and new such endeavors, developments, those should be there for future to have a mended and a maintained relationship between Washington and Islamabad.
All right. You talk of realignment, Dr. Manzoor Afridi, whether it be the U.S. mid-level defense dialogue that is going on as we speak in Washington, where one of the talks is also going to be on strategic coordination, key regional and global issues are going to be discussed, including defense and security cooperation. And then, of course, the U.S. State Department Counselor Derek Chollet, who is going to lead a delegation to Pakistan to talk on different issues, maybe including economy, and they'll also be discussing on climate change and how it has impacted Pakistan. Do you feel these are also issues that Pakistan needs to take up with the U.S.? Economic upheaval of Pakistan, the U.S. helping Pakistan, because the U.S. nevertheless remains one of the largest export partners as far as Pakistan is concerned.
I totally agree, because if you see the history of the Pakistan-U.S. relationship, so almost 70% that is encompassing, the defense and security ties. But now it's high time for both countries. United States should focus on its relationship with Pakistan, even in the sectors of education, research, technology, information technology, and even it should build a knowledge corridor with Islamabad. And importantly, what Pakistan is going through, I mean the economic situation. So U.S. should come forward to resolve it. It should be there, and it is again welcoming and encouraging. The U.S. delegation is coming to Pakistan and will discuss these issues. Even the trade and investment framework agreement, TIFA, it is also there between the two countries. United States should also open its more markets for Pakistan, I mean quotas of Pakistan exports. It should be expanded, and not only in the U.S. but in the friends of United States, I mean the Western allies or the NATO members of the U.S. alliance partners. They should also be encouraged by the Washington to help Pakistan to have more and more trade with Pakistan and also investment in Pakistan, because Pakistan has potential and Pakistan has minerals, it has rich natural resources, so they can exploit it, I mean, in a positive direction, which can boost Pakistan industry and
All
Pakistan's exports. They can be manifold.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Manzoor Afridi, to have joined us, to have talked to us about the tangents of the relationship between the U.S. and Pakistan and how that can be looked into. Last question, Dr. Salma Malik. There was a lot of bad taste as far as Pak-US relationship was concerned because of a certain cipher-related issue that was highlighted by a former Prime Minister. Do you feel that chapter is foregone? Do you feel that the U.S. wants to start afresh? And the way the different meetings are happening, whether it be on the trade end, whether it be on helping Pakistan on the climate change agenda, whether it be on the security front, terrorism front, or even strategic interests and global and regional issues. Do you feel this is the beginning maybe of a new chapter and the cipher chapter has been put aside by the US?
Omar, I would actually say that these things keep happening in countries, interaction and life. So those are the lows, and then there are the highs, and then there are like medium tones, where it is a wonderful and welcomed development that is going to unfold as of today. And next month, precisely around the same dates, there's going to be an energy security meeting between the US and Pakistan as well, in which the US is making Pakistan a partner in providing energy security needs for the Ukraine, and it's going to be kind of a partnership, which may actually be a building block. The point that you are referring to between the US and Pakistan, that may lead to much better further relations. But I would say two things. Number one, Pakistan has to make its positive relevance. That is very, very important. And at present, right now, as we speak, Pakistan is not in a very good domestic situation. So we need to turn around our own fate and become positively relevant. And the US coming to Pakistan and talking to Pakistan, not only on counterterrorism, so many other things, economic progress. Next month, we are going to have the energy security dialogue, in which
The Trade
TAPI,
and
CASA
Investment
1000,
Framework
so
Agreement
would
that is going
happen.
to be a meeting that is happening also
Exactly.
at the end of the month.
So I think issues such as cipher and all, these are small, however, very significant
True.
lows or dips in two countries' relations spanning over decades. And one can always make these things turn around. Where were the
I
US and
hope
the
we can, both of
Indians
us can
starting
make this
and where
turnaround.
this
Both of
is
our
today?
countries, Dr. Salma, can make this turnaround for the better and for the betterment of not only our two governments, but also our peoples. I think Pakistan needs that. This is the need
Absolutely.
of the hour to foster stronger relationship with all the important global partners. Thank you so very much, Dr. Salma Malik, to have joined us, to have talked to us about the US-Pakistan relationship and where all of this is going in the wake of all the meetings, important meetings that are happening as we speak. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has attended the International Joint Naval Exercise Aman 23. He arrived in Karachi on a day-long visit. He witnessed the joint naval exercises that have been organized by the Pakistan Navy, in which naval forces of almost 50 countries are taking part. It's a very important move. This is a very important meeting. Shows the solidarity between the naval marines and the marines of the different countries that are taking part. And of course, the Prime Minister saw it firsthand as well. This is a strong collaboration, and I hope this collaboration continues as more Aman exercises come underway in the years to come. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's news. We'll see you, inshallah, tomorrow with new story segments that pertain to us here in Pakistan. Allah Hafiz.